Have you ever wondered how far you'd go to save someone you love? How much of yourself you'd sacrifice before realizing the person you're truly drowning is yourself? My name is Liling Chen, and 6 months ago, I became the 27-year-old trophy wife of one of China's most ruthless business magnates, all because of a bet he never expected to lose. The January wind bit through my thin jacket as I stood outside Mercy Hospital in Boston, staring at my phone. The text from my mother glowed accusingly. 3 more days, Liling. If we don't pay, they'll stop your father's treatment. I pocketed my phone and closed my eyes, the weight of $250,000 in medical debt crushing my chest. Dad's heart condition had deteriorated rapidly after our move to America, the land of opportunity that had drained our savings and left us drowning in bills. Miss Chen? The voice was deep, slightly accented. I turned to find a tall man in an immaculate charcoal suit standing beside a black Bentley. His face was angular, expression unreadable behind designer sunglasses, despite the winter day. Mr. Zhao would like to speak with you. I knew the name. Everyone in Boston's Chinese community did. Wei Zhao, the 39-year-old real estate developer who transformed the skyline with luxury high-rises while leaving affordable housing projects in ruins. The man my father had once worked for before being discarded when his health failed. I have nothing to say to him, I replied, turning away. He's prepared to pay your father's medical bills. All of them. I froze mid-step. The hospital door slid open behind me, releasing the antiseptic smell that had become as familiar as my own perfume. Inside lay my father, getting weaker by the day, and my mother, growing thinner with worry. 20 minutes later, I sat across from Wei Zhao in the private dining room of an upscale restaurant in Chinatown. Crystal chandeliers reflected in the windows overlooking the harbor, the city lights blinking like distant stars. Your father was an excellent civil engineer, Zhao said, swirling amber liquid in a crystal glass. It's unfortunate about his health. Unfortunate, I repeated, the word tasting bitter. Is that what you call firing a loyal employee when he gets sick? A smile played at the corner of his mouth. Business decisions aren't personal, Miss Chen. They are to the people affected by them. He set down his glass, studying me. You're not what I expected. Harvard graduate, fluent in 3 languages, yet working as a translator at that community center for what? $42,000 a year. The fact that he knew so much about me sent a chill down my spine. What do you want, Mr. Zhao? I find myself in need of a wife. I nearly choked on my water. Excuse me? My investors and business partners in China expect a certain image. A traditional family man inspires more confidence than a bachelor approaching 40. So hire an actress, I said, reaching for my purse. I need someone real, educated, fluent in Mandarin and English, familiar with both cultures. His eyes never left mine. Someone like you. I'm not for sale. Everyone has a price, Miss Chen. Yours is $250,000, the exact amount of your father's medical debt. My hands trembled. You're insane. I'm practical. Here's my proposition. Marry me for 2 years. Attend functions, play the devoted wife in public, in private, separate accommodations, separate lives. After 2 years, a generous divorce settlement and your father's continued medical care for life. And if I refuse, his smile disappeared. Then I wish your family the best of luck with the hospital's collection department. I thought of my father's pale face, my mother's exhausted eyes. Why me? There must be women who would jump at this chance. Because you hate me, he said simply. Most women see my wealth and power. You see me. And in my world, Miss Chen, honesty is the rarest commodity. He extended his hand. Do we have an agreement? This isn't an agreement, it's blackmail. Call it what you will. But know this, I always win my bets. I stared at his outstretched hand, feeling the walls closing in. What bet? I bet my associate that I could get you to agree to marry me before dessert is served, as if on cue, a waiter appeared with 2 plates of crème brûlée. The perfectly caramelized sugar on top cracked like my resolve as I placed my hand in his. 2 years, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Not a day more. What I didn't tell him was that I had my own bet, that I would find a way to break free from this devil's bargain before he broke me. Little did he know, as he smiled triumphantly across the table, that I had just made the first move in a game he didn't even realize we were playing. Have you ever felt like a bird in a gilded cage, admired not for your song, but for how well you complement the decor? That's what becoming Mrs. Wei Zhao felt like. A beautiful prison with no bars you could see, but walls you could feel closing, in with every breath. 3 months into our arrangement, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of Wei's penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor. 50 floors up, the city looked like a toy set, small, manageable, utterly under control. Just how Wei liked everything in his life. The blue dress tonight, he said, not looking up from his tablet as he lounged on the Italian leather sofa. The Chanel. We're meeting with the Singapore investors. I turned from the window. I wore that last week with the Shanghai delegation, and you looked appropriate. His eyes flicked up, assessing me like I was another acquisition. Wear your hair up, the diamond earrings I bought you. Each command was delivered with the casual certainty of a man unaccustomed to being questioned. In the beginning, I tried to assert small freedoms, choosing my own clothes, declining certain events. Each attempt was met with the same cold reminder. Your father's medication costs $4,000 a month. Would you like me to stop the payments? The threat always hung in the air, unspoken but ever present. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Your father is having a good day. He asked about you, I typed back. Tell him I'm fine, that I'm happy. The lie felt like acid on my tongue. Your parents are well? Wei asked, noticing my expression. Yes, I replied, surprised by his interest. In 3 months, he'd never once asked about them. Good. I've arranged for your father to see a specialist next week. Dr. Harrison is flying. In from Johns Hopkins, I froze. Why? His condition is deteriorating. The current treatment plan isn't working. He said this as if discussing a business project that was behind schedule. How do you know that? I receive weekly reports on his condition. He stood, straightening his perfectly tailored suit. Did you think I wouldn't monitor my investment, Mickey? Father is not an investment, I snapped, hands trembling. Everything is an investment, Leland. He moved toward me, his cologne, sandalwood and something sharper, filling my senses, including you. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with unexpected gentleness. I flinched, and something flashed in his eyes. Hurt? Impossible. The car will be ready at 7, he said, voice cooler now. Don't be late. After he left, I sank onto the sofa, remembering the day my mother and I had helped my father move to America 15 years ago. He'd been so full of hope, certain that his engineering expertise would be valued here. For a while it was. Then Wei Zhao bought the firm my father worked for and restructured it, discarding anyone who didn't fit his vision, including the aging Chinese engineer whose English wasn't perfect. 2 years later, my father's heart began to fail. The doctors blamed stress and genetics. I blamed Wei Zhao, and now I was wearing his ring, living in his home, playing the adoring wife at galas and business dinners where I was paraded like an exotic accessory. The worst part? I was good at it. Harvard hadn't just taught me languages. It had taught me to adapt, to observe, to strategize. I'd spent 3 months watching Wei, learning his business, noting his weaknesses. The more I learned, the more I understood that this marriage wasn't just about appearances. Wei needed me for something else. access to Boston's old money circles that viewed him as an outsider despite his billions. That night at the investor dinner, I played my role perfectly. Charming, intelligent, the perfect bridge between East and West. I watched Wei's expression as I conversed effortlessly with the Singapore investors in Mandarin, then switched to discussing Boston's historical architecture with the banker's wife in English. "Your wife is remarkable," the lead investor told Wei over dessert. "Yes," Wei agreed, his eyes finding mine across the table. "She exceeds expectations." Something in his gaze made my skin warm. I told myself it was the wine. Later that night, as our driver took us home, Wei broke the silence. "You were impressive tonight." "I was doing my job," I replied, staring out the window. "Is that all this is to you?" "A job?" I turned to look at him. "Isn't that what you want? A convenient employee who happens to wear your ring?" His jaw tightened. "What I want..." He trailed off, then reached into his pocket. "I have something for you." He handed me a small velvet box. Inside was a jade pendant on a gold chain, not ostentatious like the diamonds he usually gave me for public appearances, but simple, elegant. "It belonged to my grandmother," he said quietly. "She was the only person who ever truly saw me." I stared at the pendant, then at him. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because last night, when you thought I wasn't watching, you helped my housekeeper's son with his English homework." His voice was soft, almost vulnerable. "You didn't have to do that. There was nothing in it for you." I swallowed hard. "Yuen is struggling in school. His mother works 3 jobs, including cleaning your house. It was just an hour of my time. An hour that showed me who you really are." He took the necklace from the box and motioned for me to turn around. "May I?" I hesitated, then turned. His fingers were warm against my neck as he fastened the clasp. When I faced him again, something had changed in his eyes. "There's a charity gala next week," he said, "for children's education. I thought perhaps you might want to be more involved in choosing the organizations we support." I touched the jade, pendant confusion washing over me. "Why?" "Because you care about more than appearances, and perhaps..." He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "Perhaps I want to be seen as more than just my money." That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of my separate bedroom, the jade pendant cool against my skin. I'd come into this marriage armed with hatred and determination, ready to find Wei's weakness and exploit it for my freedom. I never expected his weakness might be me, and I never expected the most dangerous development of all, the possibility that behind the ruthless businessman was a human being I might not be able to hate forever. Do you know that terrifying moment when you realize your heart is betraying your mind? When everything you thought you knew about someone, about yourself, begins to unravel like a poorly knit sweater. 6 months into my marriage to Wei Zhao, I found myself standing in the rain outside my parents' modest apartment in Quincy, unable to ring the doorbell. How could I explain that I was beginning to see glimpses of humanity in the man I'd sworn to despise? That sometimes, when he thought I wasn't looking, I caught him watching me with something that looked dangerously like tenderness. "Liling?" My mother opened the door, concern etched on her face. "You're soaked. Come in, come in." Inside, the apartment smelled of ginger and star anise, my father's favorite beef noodle soup simmering on the stove. The familiar scent wrapped around me like a childhood blanket. "Where's Baba?" I asked, scanning the small living room. "Resting. The new medication makes him tired, but the doctor says his heart function is improving." She squeezed my hand. "We can never repay what your husband has done for us." I swallowed hard. "There's nothing to repay, Ma. Wei is..." What was he? My captor, my employer, the man whose gentle touch last night had sent electricity racing through my veins, "Sit," she commanded, pushing me toward the kitchen table. "Tell me what's troubling you." "Nothing's troubling me." She gave me a look that only mothers can give, one that strips away pretenses. "I raised you, Liling. I know when my daughter is at war with herself." I broke down then, tears mixing with raindrops still clinging to my cheeks. "I don't know who I am anymore, Ma. When we made this arrangement, everything was clear. He was the villain, I was the sacrifice, but now you see him," she finished softly. "Now how can I hate someone who sits by my father's bedside discussing engineering projects as if Baba's opinion still matters? Who notices when I'm upset even before I do? Who looks at me sometimes like—" I trailed off. "Like you're the answer to a question he's been asking his whole life?" I looked up, startled. "You've seen it too." She nodded, pouring tea for both of us. "Your husband came here last week while you were at that charity event. He asked for my mother's recipe for red bean soup, said it was your favorite as a child." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "Why would he do that?" "Because that's what people do when they fall in love, daughter. They learn what matters to the other person. This isn't love, Ma, it's a business arrangement. Perhaps it started that way." She sipped her tea. "But the heart doesn't understand contracts." Later that evening, I returned to the penthouse to find it dark except for a soft glow from the kitchen. Following the light, I found Wei at the stove, his suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, stirring something that smelled suspiciously like— "Red bean soup?" I asked, incredulous. He turned, a flicker of embarrassment crossing his face. "Your mother said it was your favorite. I wanted to—" He trailed off, then straightened as if gathering his CEO persona around him again. "You missed dinner. I thought you might be hungry." Something shifted in my chest, a wall crumbling, a door opening. "You cooked for me." "Attempted to cook," he corrected, gesturing to the mess on the counter. "I've never actually. My family had staff for this." I moved beside him, taking the wooden spoon from his hand. Our fingers brushed, and neither of us pulled away. "You're stirring too fast. It needs to be gentle." I demonstrated, aware of his proximity, his scent, the way his eyes followed my movements. "Like this?" he asked, taking the spoon back, his arm brushing mine. "Better." I smiled despite myself. "Where did you learn to cook at all?" I didn't. YouTube is surprisingly educational. His confession was followed by something I'd never heard before. Wei Zhao's genuine laughter, not the practiced chuckle he used at business functions, but something real and unguarded. We ate red bean soup at the kitchen island, talking about nothing and everything. He told me about growing up in rural China, his father's gambling debts, how he'd worked since age 12 to support his mother and sisters. "Is that why you're so driven, so ruthless in business?" I asked. His expression darkened. "I learned early that the world doesn't reward kindness. It rewards power." "And yet here you are, making red bean soup at midnight." Something vulnerable flickered in his eyes. "Perhaps I'm learning there are different kinds of power." The next morning, I woke to find a file on my nightstand. Inside were property deeds, bank statements, and legal documents, all concerning a development project in my father's hometown in China. At breakfast, I confronted Wei. "What is this?" "A waste management treatment facility I'm building in Hangzhou." He didn't look up from his newspaper. "The engineer overseeing the project just quit. I need someone who understands both American environmental standards and Chinese regulations. My father hasn't worked in years, which is precisely why he needs this." Now Wei met my gaze. "Not charity, Liling, dignity, purpose. Something I suspect you understand better than most." I stared at him, recognition dawning. "You're offering him a job, a real one?" "Consulting only. 4 hours a day, from home." "The salary is commensurate with his experience." My throat tightened. "Why?" He set down his newspaper, looking suddenly uncertain. because last night was the first time you've ever genuinely smiled at me, and I'd like to see it happen again. That afternoon, I sat in Dr. Harrison's office as he reviewed my father's latest test results. His improvement is remarkable, the doctor said. Whatever lifestyle changes you've implemented are working. It's not just the medication and diet, I admitted. He has purpose again. He feels valued. Sometimes that's the best medicine, Doctor, Harrison replied. Speaking of which, your husband mentioned concerns about your stress levels. Have you been experiencing headaches, trouble sleeping? I frowned. Wei discussed my health with you? He's worried. Says you work too hard at those charity events, don't sleep enough. The doctor smiled. In my 30 years practicing medicine, I've rarely seen a husband so attentive to his wife's well-being. That evening, I found Wei in his home office, surrounded by blueprints for a new development. Without a word, I placed a cup of tea beside him, oolong with honey, the way he liked it. He looked up, surprise evident in his features. Thank you. I lingered, studying his face, the lines etched by years of ambition and loneliness, the eyes that had begun to soften when they looked at me. Why did you speak to my doctor about me? I asked. He set down his pen. You've lost weight. You have? Nightmares. I can hear you through the walls sometimes. I hadn't known he could hear me, that he listened for me in the night. This arrangement, he continued, gesturing between us. It wasn't supposed to harm you, wasn't it? I challenged. You blackmailed me into marriage, Wei. Yes. His honesty was disarming, and there hasn't been a day I haven't regretted the way this began. Then why did you do it? He was silent for a long moment. Because I saw you that day at the hospital. Not just your beauty, though there's that, but your strength, your fierceness. The way you looked at me with such defiance when everyone else looked away. His voice grew softer. I thought if I possessed you, I might understand you. What I didn't expect was... What? I whispered. That understanding you would mean seeing myself through your eyes. He stood, moving toward me with the careful movements of someone approaching a wounded animal. And I didn't like what I saw, Lilling. He was close now, close enough that I could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes, feel the warmth radiating from his body. What do you see now? I asked, my voice barely audible. His hand rose, hesitantly, to brush a strand of hair from my face, a possibility I never allowed myself to hope for. The space between us charged with unspoken words, with futures neither of us had imagined 6 months ago. I thought of all the reasons I should step back, the history, the power imbalance, the fear of being vulnerable to someone who had once wielded my father's health like a weapon. Instead, I leaned forward and pressed my lips to his. For a moment, he froze. Then his arms wrapped around me, pulling me against him as if I were the oxygen he'd been denied his entire life. The kiss deepened, years of loneliness and pretense dissolving between us like sugar in hot water. When we finally broke, apart, both breathing hard, Wei rested his forehead against mine. This changes everything, he murmured. Yes, I agreed, my heart racing with equal parts terror and exhilaration. But into what? Neither of us had the answer. But as he led me by the hand toward his bedroom, a room I'd never entered in our 6 months of marriage, I knew we were about to discover it together. What I didn't know was that in the morning, everything we'd begun to build would come crashing down around us with a single phone call. Have you ever experienced how a single moment can rewrite your entire story? How the same hands that once held you captive can become the ones you most long to hold? Morning light streamed through Wei's bedroom windows as I stirred, momentarily disoriented by unfamiliar surroundings. The events of the previous night rushed back, his touch, his whispered confessions, The way we'd finally surrendered to whatever had been building between us for months. Wei wasn't beside me, but I could hear his voice in the next room, the measured, authoritative tone he used for business calls. I wrapped myself in his silk robe and padded to the doorway, watching him pace by the windows, tension evident in every line of his body. "I don't care what it takes," he was saying. "Buy them out, all of them." When he turned and saw me, his expression softened momentarily before hardening again. "I'll call you back," he said, ending the call. "What's wrong?" I asked. He hesitated, then gestured to his tablet on the coffee table. "See for yourself." The screen showed a Boston Globe article. Chinese developer accused of bribing officials for Boston Harbor project. My stomach dropped as I scanned the details. Allegations of corruption, secret payments, environmental corners cut. "Is it true?" I asked quietly. Not in the way they are presenting it. Wei ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of discomposure. "Yes, we make contributions to certain officials' campaigns. That's how business works in this country, whether they admit it or not." "And the environmental violations?" His jaw tightened. "Bureaucratic technicalities, nothing that puts anyone at risk." I thought of my father, how passionately he'd always spoken about engineering ethics. "My father is overseeing the environmental aspects of your Hangzhou project," I said, slowly. "Does he know about these technicalities?" "Your father's role is symbolic, Leiling. You know that." The words hit like a slap. "Symbolic? You said he was valued, that his expertise mattered." "It does. For his well-being. For yours." Wei moved toward me, but I stepped back. "Everything I've done has been for you." "No," I countered, fury rising. "Everything you've done has been for control. My father's job, his medical care, this entire marriage. It's all about power for you." "That's not fair." For the first time, I heard real hurt in his voice. Last night I thought I was seeing the real Wei Zhao. I clutched his robe tighter around me, suddenly feeling naked in more ways than one. Now I'm not so. Sure, that person exists. His phone rang again. He glanced at it, torn. "Take it," I said bitterly. "Business always comes first, doesn't it?" I retreated to my own room, mind racing. In the shower, I scrubbed at my skin as if I could wash away the previous night, the confusion, the feeling of being played yet again in Wei's elaborate game. When I emerged, dressed in my own clothes, Wei was waiting. He'd changed into a fresh suit, CEO armor back in place. "We need to discuss how to handle this publicly," he said. "As my wife, I'm not going to defend corruption," I interrupted. "I'm not asking you to lie. Just to stand by me." He held out his hand. "Please, Leiling, I need you." I stared at his outstretched hand, remembering another time he'd extended it across a restaurant table, offering a devil's bargain. But this time, his eyes held something new. Vulnerability, fear of loss. "I can't," I whispered. "Not until I know the truth." That afternoon, I visited my father at the hospital where he was having his monthly checkup. He looked better than I'd seen him in years, color in his cheeks, vitality in his movements. "Baba, I need to ask you something," I said, sitting beside him. "Wei's Boston Harbor project. Have you reviewed the environmental impact studies?" His expression grew serious. "Yes, Wei asked me to look them over last month." "And?" "I found several concerning issues." He pulled a folder from his bag. "The soil contamination levels, the proximity to wildlife habitats. I gave Wei my recommendations for addressing them." My heart sank. "Did he implement them?" "Every single one." My father's response stunned me. He halted construction for 3 weeks to revise the plans, at considerable cost. "Why do you ask?" I showed him the news article on my phone. He read it carefully, then looked up. These allegations concern permits from 2 years ago, before my involvement. Have you asked Wei about this? He said it was just how business works. My father's expression softened. When I came to America, I believed everything would be above board, transparent. It was naive. Systems have flaws everywhere, Liling. The question is not whether Wei has played an imperfect game, but whether he's willing to change the way he plays. How can I know that? By watching what he does when no one is looking. He patted my hand. Like hiring an aging engineer with a heart, condition, and actually listening to his advice. That evening, I returned to the penthouse to find Wei in his office. Suit jacket discarded, tie loosened, surrounded by documents. He looked up when I entered, hope and wariness battling in his expression. The Globe is running a follow-up story. Tomorrow, he said. I've provided them with documentation showing all environmental violations have been addressed, all permits properly obtained, albeit through channels that some might question. Why are you telling me this? Because I want no more secrets between us. He stood, approaching slowly. I've built my empire by any means necessary, Liling. I won't pretend otherwise. But meeting you, he faltered. Loving you has made me question whether the empire is worth the cost. Love? The word hung between us, both fragile and weighty. Yes, he admitted. I love you. I think I have since you looked at me across that restaurant table and refused to be intimidated by my power or my money. I swallowed hard. You said everyone has a price, and you've proven me wrong every day since. He took my hands in his. I've never cared what anyone thought of me, only what they could do for me. But I care what you think, Liling. I care so much it terrifies me. Show me, I whispered. How? The Quincy Affordable Housing Project your company abandoned. Restart. It'd make it better than before. It's not financially viable. Neither is love, I countered. Neither is doing the right thing when no one's watching. But you do it anyway, because of who you want to be. For a long moment he studied me, calculation and emotion warring in his gaze. Then silently, he reached for his phone. Andrew, he said to his CFO, the Quincy Project, resurrected, full funding, and find the original residents who were displaced, offer them first right of return. When he hung up, I was staring at him in disbelief. You may have married me because of a bet, he said quietly, but I'm betting on us now, on what we could be together, not as a business arrangement, but as partners. Partners, I repeated. Not owner and possession. Equals, he confirmed. If you'll have me. That night we talked until dawn, about his childhood poverty, his ruthless climb to success, his loneliness at the top, about my dreams beyond being his wife, my passion for community advocacy, my desire to help immigrants like my parents navigate American systems. 6 months later, the Quincy Housing Project opened, with my father as a consulting engineer and me as director of the Community Support Center on the ground floor. Wei attended the ribbon cutting not as the imperious CEO, but as my husband, standing slightly behind me as I delivered the opening speech. That evening, as we walked along Boston Harbor past the development that had nearly driven us apart, Wei squeezed my hand. You know, he said thoughtfully, when I made that bet about marrying you, I thought I was securing just another asset. And instead, he stopped, turning to face me. Instead, I found the one person brave enough to show me that winning isn't about what you acquire. It's about who you become. I touched the jade pendant, his grandmother's, that I now wore every day. And who have you become, Wei Zhao? A better man. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that still made my heart race. Though still a work in progress. Aren't we all? I leaned into him, reflecting on our unlikely journey. You thought that bet at the restaurant was the end of my freedom. but it was just the beginning of yours. As the sun set over the harbor, casting golden light across the water, I realized that sometimes the most powerful act isn't escaping your cage. It's transforming it into something else entirely. Not a prison of obligation, but a space where broken people can heal each other, where deals can transform into devotion, where even the most hardened heart can learn to beat in time with another. Wei had once bet on my desperation. I had bet on his capacity for change. In the end, we'd both won something neither of us had known to wager for, a love built not on power, but on seeing each other fully and without pretense, and choosing to stay anyway.